Hello, and today in this video I'm going to be covering monsters that I think a Witcher would refuse a contract on, and more specifically the ones that I think Geralt would refuse a contract on, because not all Witchers would refuse a contract on some of these. Now, you may have seen a video very similar to this on either TikTok or YouTube. It is my most popular video on both platforms, which I am very glad about, considering my most popular video before that was about the Ciri sex doll. So you may be wondering then, why am I making a full YouTube video about the same topic? And there are three main reasons for that. Firstly, I had a lot of comments disagreeing with my picks in the original video, so I figured that I would just address them in this video. Secondly, it's because that there were some that I had realised that I had missed out in the original video, so I will be including them in this video instead. The final reason is to do with the future of this channel. Is because I plan to make more YouTube Witcher content in the future, so keep an eye out for that if that's the kind of thing you're interested in. So with that out of the way, let's get on with the video, shall we? So I tend to split this into two categories. Category 1 is the monsters that Geralt would refuse a contract on based upon moral reasons. And then category 2 is the monsters that I believe that Geralt wouldn't be able to beat or kill. The category of monsters that Geralt would refuse based upon moral reasons is a very broad one, probably many more monsters included in this category, but it's much easier to summarise, therefore I'll only mention a few. The reason for this is because Geralt has got a code that prevents him from killing any sentient, non-harmful creatures, and what I mean by non-harmful creatures are creatures that don't mean any ill intent towards humans, generally speaking. And as I said in the original video, this includes creatures like godlins and knockers, but there are also creatures that are quite complicated. And there's only two creatures that I'm going to be focusing on out of these complicated bunch. The two that I'm going to be focusing on are dragons and trolls. We'll start with trolls, and if you don't know much about trolls in the Witcher universe, they're definitely sentient and generally speaking not evil, but they can be harmful to humans on occasion. This is not done out of them being evil, it's generally done out of stupidity. Therefore I asked my TikTok whether they believe that Geralt would kill any sentient trolls based upon the fact that they can be harmful to humans, in spite of the fact that they generally don't intend to be. Most of the people in the comments came to the conclusion that Geralt probably wouldn't kill any sentient trolls as long as they had no intention to do so, and he would normally try to resolve the matter peacefully. And that just so happens to be the side of the argument that I fall onto as well. However, it's very important to differentiate between the sentient and non-harmful trolls and the rabid trolls, the trolls that will just attack anyone on sight. I believe in those cases Geralt would kill the troll. Moving on to dragons, I would like to quickly correct something that I said in the original video that proved to be false. In that I said that there was something called the Witcher's Code that prevented Geralt from hunting dragons, when in reality it is his own code. There is no such thing as a Witcher's Code. Geralt only says it as an excuse really for his own code. Dragons in the Witcher series are definitely sentient, very intelligent in fact, and aren't evil. They generally even try to avoid human beings. This is why Geralt does not hunt dragons. If you, much like many of the people in my comment section of the original video, are thinking to yourself, Geralt did take a contract on a dragon in the books, well, I'm about to explain why you're wrong. And in a sense you have got a point in that Geralt did join a hunting party of people who were intending on killing a dragon, but I'm about to explain why you're wrong. Because did Geralt ever actually intend on killing the dragon? No, he actually said many things on the contrary, many times while he was with that hunting party. The reason why he was with that hunting party is because one, Dandelion as well as Borch3 Jackdaws and Téa and Vea joined the hunting party, but the main reason why Geralt joined was because Yennefer was there. And not only that, at the very end of the short story, Geralt ends up defending villain Trettenmuth against that very same hunting party. However, let me cast your eyes to The Witcher 2, where there is another interaction with a dragon, and Geralt actually ends up fighting a dragon. And this is where I believe that there is a massive exception to this rule. I believe that Geralt will kill a dragon if it is, say, attacking a town or something like that, much like what we saw in The Witcher 2. And this is also why I believe that Geralt has then got the choice whether or not he kills the dragon or not. I believe that Geralt probably wouldn't kill the dragon in that scenario at the very end, because Geralt has already rendered the dragon harmless at that point. If Geralt had no other choice than to kill the dragon, then I believe that he would. As to whether Geralt could actually beat a dragon, we did just literally talk about where he did beat a dragon, so we know that he can beat a dragon. However, could he beat a golden dragon like villain Trettenmuth? That is unknown, because villain Trettenmuth is said to be a very, very capable and strong fighter. But now that we're talking about whether or not Geralt could actually beat certain creatures, we're going to be moving on to creatures that I believe that Geralt wouldn't be able to beat. I'd like to quickly say that a recurring theme that I picked up on was that there was this almost obsession for Geralt to be one of the most powerful people in the Witcher universe, when in reality he really isn't, and I personally don't believe that he should be. I don't know, it could just be me that I believe that it is more interesting and makes the stakes higher if Geralt isn't this all-powerful person in the Witcher universe. And this to me is part of the reason why I believe that the books tell a much better story than the games do, because the stakes are much higher, because Geralt in the books is much less powerful than how he is in the games. But yeah, in my opinion, there's no need to dick ride Geralt to the point where he has to be this almighty, all-powerful figure, when in reality I don't believe that he should be. And that's just a quick point I wanted to make before I start talking about some of these creatures. With that out the way, we're going to be starting with the most powerful creature in the entire Witcher universe, Djinn. Reason for this, of course, is how would one go about killing a god? Sure, at the end of Hearts of Stone, Geralt can choose to attempt to lift the pact that Djinn has got with Olgierd von Everic. Sure, in a sense, if Geralt had a contract similar to that, there is a chance that he might take it, although I do think that it would take a lot of money. However, if we're talking about a contract to kill Djinn, I don't believe that such a thing is possible. Plus, if Djinn wished, Geralt would die before he even was able to react. So yeah, it seems like a pretty simple one to me, but there were some people who did disagree with me. Speaking of people who disagree with me, this is another controversial one. The next monster I'm going to be talking about is a Djinn. Again, with people saying that he takes on a Djinn in the show, the books, and the games. And again, I'm going to have to talk about why you're kind of incorrect. And it's also very, very important to remember that we are talking about a contract to kill this monster. And I don't believe that Geralt or many of the people that we know of could kill a Djinn. But first I'll talk about the Djinn encounters that were mentioned by people in the comments. In the books, in the short story called The Last Wish, Geralt does have an encounter with a Djinn. But however, he never even attempts to take it on in a fight. It is Yennefer who attempts to take it on, and she was losing. Yennefer nearly died as a result, but then Geralt made his last wish to protect and save Yennefer. Therefore, if Yennefer was unable to take on a Djinn with all of her magic, how is Geralt going to be able to take on a Djinn with his sword and some signs? Because, you know, Geralt of course doesn't really possess that kind of magical ability. However, in the game encounter, Geralt and Yennefer do take on a Djinn together. But what I will say about this is that there is a major difference in the power of Geralt in the books and the power of Geralt in the games. However, they do fight a Djinn in order to get it to grant them a wish, but could they have killed the Djinn? I don't believe they could have. But I still think that the game has got this entire thing wrong on a few levels. In that I believe that they've made Djinns less powerful than they should have. And the second point I would like to make is that I don't believe that Geralt would be able to weaken a Djinn just using his sword. A magical spirit, and I don't believe that Geralt would be able to fight it with a sword. And as I already said, I don't believe that Geralt and Yennefer would have been able to kill the Djinn together. They only managed to get it to grant them a wish. So yeah, I would say that Geralt would take a contract in order to resolve a matter peacefully, but a contract to kill a Djinn, I don't believe that Geralt would be able to take that. Now this is the first one that wasn't in my original video, and it's quite controversial considering he kills one in The Witcher 2. I'm not even 100% sure about this one either. But I do not think that in typical conditions, Geralt would have been able to kill the kieran. This is because typically the kieran is hiding deep underwater, where for Geralt and most people it would be impossible to kill. If Geralt goes underwater and tries to fight something that size, he will surely lose. However, of course, with the help of a sorcerer or sorceress to drag the kieran out of the water, Geralt would be able to kill it, as we saw in The Witcher 2, of course. But speaking of how Geralt would be useless in underwater combat, next we're going to be talking about sea monsters. As Geralt is likely to not accept a contract on a sea monster, he pretty much says as much in the short story called A Little Sacrifice. Geralt also says in that short story that there are more monsters underwater than there are on land. However, there aren't actually that many monsters that are named in the Witcher universe. Some of the ones that we know of are Kraken, Voidionoi, and Sea Witches. The typical response to this was one of two things. First one being about the kieran, which I've already covered, and I already said that in normal circumstances I don't believe that Geralt would be able to take on the kieran. Plus, it's also important to note that a kieran is a river-dwelling monster, not a sea monster, and there's also plenty of evidence in the books of Geralt taking on river monsters. The second response was in regards to the Salkamore in The Witcher Netflix, which he takes on. My simple response to that is that I don't consider The Witcher Netflix to be canon, because it doesn't stay consistent with the books, and it doesn't really even stay consistent with its own lore. So yeah, essentially the reason is that I don't actually consider what went on in The Witcher Netflix when actually making my videos. I just focus on the books and the games. If you want to believe the Netflix lore over the actual book lore, then I mean, that's up to you, but I would have to fully disagree and just say that you're wrong in my opinion, but you know, it is what it is. However, it's very important to note that Geralt has fought sea monsters in both the games and in the books. In the games, during The Witcher 1, one of the chapters does revolve around an underwater city in the middle of the lake by Vizima. The Voidionoi are the inhabitants of this underwater city, and they worship the Lady of the Lake. Geralt ends up fighting many of these Voidianoi who have come onto land. It's important to note that Geralt doesn't fight any Voidianoi who are underwater, he only fights the ones that are on land. Geralt's encounter in the books went very different. He was attacked and nearly killed by the warriors of an underwater city called East, just outside of Bremervold. So we can suspect that Geralt was attacked by nymphs who are essentially just underwater dryads. This time a lot of the combat occurred underwater, this is why Geralt very nearly died, and if not for the intervention of a mermaid, Geralt would have died. So I would say that it's safe to say that Geralt wouldn't be able to take on many sea monsters, especially ones in the deep sea such as a kraken. This is another monster that I didn't mention in my original video, and the reason for that is because we don't actually know too much about it. It is only mentioned in the prequel book Season of Storms, and Geralt as well as a werewolf take a lot of care to avoid it, so we can suspect that it is very powerful. This monster is called a Gorgon. This is not to be confused with the mountain called Mount Gorgon, which is just next to Toussaint. It's also suspected that the mountain is named after the creature, and that there is a massive Gorgon living under Mount Gorgon. Therefore you could say that I'm only speculating about this one, and I really am, but I suspect that Geralt wouldn't take a contract on one considering the way in which he described how powerful they were, but I can't say for sure considering we don't really know too much about it. Speaking of Season of Storms though, no one seems to mention this creature from the books, which is actually very powerful. The creature I'm referring to is called an Aguara, otherwise known as a vixen. These creatures are sentient, intelligent, and normally harmless to humans, however they have been known to kidnap elven daughters. The reason why they do this is because this is their form of reproduction, and as a result vixen have got an elven form and their typical fox-like form. The reason why I've decided to mention them is because they possess a large amount of magical ability, and this is particularly true when it comes to illusions. During Geralt's encounter with a vixen, he was adamant that he did not want to fight it. As well as that, his party that he was currently with at the time were constantly being misled into many traps set by the vixen using illusions. The vixen's also got the power to get other creatures to do its bidding. During that section of the book, it actually gets a lot of snakes to do its bidding, as well as some Voidianoi. You can tell by Geralt's reaction during that section of the book that he was not confident that he would be able to beat one in a fight, and he actually seemed quite scared. But it is very important to note that at that point in the books, Geralt didn't have his swords on him. Therefore, it would have been quite hard for him to face any monster, not just a vixen. However, despite that, I still think that Geralt would refuse a contract on one because it does possess a large amount of magical ability. However, I would like to add on the end there, in contrary to that point, I do believe that there is a chance that Geralt would be able to beat one in a fight though. Final creature I'm going to talk about is another one that caused a little bit of debate in the comment. This creature is the most powerful creature in the Witcher universe besides Gauntrodym. The creature I'm of course talking about are higher vampires. In the original video I cited a quote from the books where it is stated that Geralt says to Regis that he doubts that anyone has got the amount of money in the world that it would take for Geralt to accept a contract on a higher vampire. So you'd think they'd be pretty straightforward since Geralt literally says that he wouldn't accept a contract on one. However, you'd be mistaken, a lot of people did disagree with this, so I'm going to just dissect their arguments. The first one I'll briefly mention is that someone disputed the quote that I used, meaning that they believed that Geralt wasn't necessarily referring to all higher vampires, just Regis. And I suppose that the books are open to interpretation, you can interpret it in that way, but this is why I think that you're wrong. I think that personally the reason why Geralt couldn't have meant specifically just Regis is because at that point in the books, Geralt and Regis weren't really friends. They'd only known each other for no more than 2 days. So why would Geralt say that he's going to refuse all of the money in the world because he doesn't want to kill Regis when the two don't really have a bond yet? I think the more likely and more plausible explanation is that Geralt doesn't believe that he would be able to beat Regis in a fight. So the main criticism of this entire point though was regarding the entire plot of Blood and Wine, since during Blood and Wine, Geralt spends the entire plot hunting a higher vampire named Detlef. However, to that I've got a few points to make. Firstly, when Geralt took the contract, he didn't actually know that he would end up hunting down a higher vampire. Instead, the contract he took was for the Beast of Beauclair, not Detlef. He didn't know that he was accepting a contract on a higher vampire at the time. Secondly, the involvement of Geralt's great friend Regis meant that he had more emotional connection to the case. It also meant that Geralt actually stood a chance in a fight against Detlef with Regis at his side. Thirdly, Geralt stated to Anna Henrietta straight after finding out that Detlef was a higher vampire that he didn't believe he would be able to kill Detlef. This is not only because of the pure combat ability of a higher vampire, this is also because higher vampires cannot die unless they are killed by another of their kind, meaning that even if Geralt Geralt beat Dettlaff in a fight, he would never truly be able to kill Dettlaff. The fourth point is that there's a reason why Geralt spent the entirety of Blood and Wine trying to resolve the matter peacefully. It's mainly because of Regis convincing him to do so, but it is also because of the fact that he wouldn't be able to kill Dettlaff. And finally we come to the fight between Geralt and Dettlaff. And this was the main comment that I got on the original video, in that Geralt literally kills a higher vampire at the end of Blood and Wine. Well, firstly, as I said earlier, there is a major difference between the power of book Geralt and game Geralt. Geralt in the books, in my opinion, is how powerful he should be, and Geralt in the books wouldn't have been able to even take on Dettlaff. However, the comments were correct in that Geralt does end up beating Dettlaff in this fight, but this is why you're wrong. Geralt would have never been able to kill Dettlaff because, as I said, a higher vampire can only die if it is killed by another higher vampire. This is why at the end of the fight with Dettlaff, after Geralt beats him, Regis has to get up and has to be the one to kill Dettlaff. Otherwise Dettlaff would never have truly died and would have come back and killed Geralt as well as many more people. Also, one quick side note, something that really pisses me off about this boss fight is that this game is seriously going to have me believe that a bit of rubble that Geralt was able to lift is the thing that stopped Regis from getting up and getting involved in the fight. He's a higher vampire, for fuck's sake. He's meant to be way stronger than Geralt, but it's just a game, I suppose. So to conclude this point, it's not just because Geralt likely wouldn't be able to beat a higher vampire in a fight, even though he has done, as we saw. It's because he wouldn't be able to truly kill it. Now, if a higher vampire is particularly vindictive, eventually this higher vampire will come back and kill Geralt eventually. And this is of course in the books why Geralt put such a high price on a contract for a higher vampire. However, as with all of these scenarios, if there is a way that Geralt can resolve the matter peacefully, I'm sure that he will try to do so. So yeah, that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if I missed any, or just generally let me know your thoughts if you want to, of course. And yeah, that's it from me. Bye now.